Hey, David Brewster here, new episode of Soloing Secrets, and this is Donald Roser, also known as Buck Dharma, the driving force behind the band Blue Öyster Cult. And Buck Dharma's career started around 1961. Blue Öyster Cult's career started around 1967. Definitely a very dynamic and influential band. And I feature Blue Öyster Cult here on the channel. It's been like 4 or 5 years ago. We're going to do a deep dive into his soloing style. A very expressive and melodic guitarist, great feel and tone and phrasing, and targeting arpeggios, and definitely modal playing, and all kinds of cool stuff. Chromatic scales, all kinds of cool stuff. And I actually met Buck and opened for Blue Öyster Cult. That was back in the mid-90s, around 1995. I was playing with a band, and we opened for BOC. I was on cloud 9 that day, and when they finally played Godzilla, I mean, I literally was just jumping around, freaking out. I mean, that was a great day. But anyway, if you're a Blue Öyster Cult fan, Buck Dharma fan, or a guitarist just looking for some cool licks and ideas, buckle up, because here we go. So much like we've done on other episodes in the Soloing Secret series, when you're checking out a certain player like Buck Dharma, it would be a really good idea to scope out his musical influences, which will reveal certain things that pop up in his music. And with Buck's influences, there's a wide array of different influences here. Guitar influences, you know, also bands like the Ventures and the Beatles and Elvis Presley and stuff. But here's Buck Dharma's elusive musical influences right here. And as far as Buck's actual soloing secrets, the things he typically does with the guitar in his hands, and there's a lot. Modified blues phrasing, various pentatonic scales, blues scales, various scales and modes. He definitely seems fond of Dorian. You'll find Buck kind of weaving into Dorian quite a bit, also Mixolydian too, chromatic scales. And there's something about Buck's way of putting things together. Sometimes it's completely atonal and random and chromatic and weird, but somehow it works. It fits in the song. And when you hear stuff like that, you're going to go, man, this is weird. But it works. You know, it actually fits and kind of serves the song too. So I love that. But anyway, here's Buck Dharma's soloing secrets right here. So as far as the music in this lesson, I basically pulled ideas from 5 classic Blue Öyster Cult albums. And keep in mind, they've released 16 studio albums, 10 live albums, and 21 compilations. So there's a lot of music to go through for BOC. And here are the album cover, you know, images on this image right here. That way you can kind of find the albums where I pulled music from, right here. With the opening, that was me playing around with Buck's solo from Lonely Teardrops from the album Mirrors, which is on the wall right there. And that's a really interesting BOC album. Buck's playing and tone and phrasing on that record is great. And he's channeling some David Gilmour, I hear, you know, with this solo like this. Something like that. So we're in D minor for the song. And he's actually starting with this C and this A note. And he's kind of doing this back and forth, kind of, you know, like fretted notes and pull-offs. Like that. So you're pulling off that C to A, and then you're going to pick that C again and then pull it off back to A. Something like that. And then you hold that bend, and you hear him kind of like very quietly release it. And then he's grabbing this E note, bending it up and down a half step. And then you hear this. So like that A to that F, and then that D to G back to that F. So it's really phrased, you know. And rhythmically it's phrasing right there. And then right there, you're going to rake into this E note on the high E string and then grab that G and you're going to bend it. So you're going to rake into that E, bend that G up to A, and then release that bend. You've got this G, F, G. And then grab this D note on the B string, and then you're going to grab E to F. Or, so you're doing that. So you're going to grab that D, and I was wrong. Actually, it's F, E, F right there. You know, something like that. So at the beginning, you're doing... And then... Right here, here's the rake. So after that rake and then the bend, you're doing that, and then go up back to that F. You're going to grab that G. You're going to grab that G, you're going to bend the G up and then do a bend and release on that G. And then you're going to grab this A note, bend that up a step and a half. Think like a Gilmore bend right there. And then right there, that A to G, and then that F sharp to E again. And you're going to slide this D down to that C, and then that C to D. And then right there, that E to G and end on F. You know, for the end. So really slowly, and then a little closer to tempo. Cool, expressive, melodic solo, and it reminds me of Gilmore a little bit. That's a great one. Next up's the opening to Transmaniacon MC from the first Blue Öyster Cult album, which is on the wall right there. That's an absolute must and a classic for sure. And I've actually shown this before. This appears in the BÖC Chordplay from 4 or 5 years ago. But I'm showing this again because it's a really good example of that random atonal chromatic phrasing from Buck. Sometimes it happens in his riffs, sometimes in his solos. But this opening's like this. Something like that. So we're banging out this D minor 7 right there, 2 scratches and then the chord, and you're going to do that 4 times. And then you've got this. Just bizarro weirdness right there. So that A octave, A octave, and then you're grabbing that G sharp to that E, and then it's basically down here, that G to F sharp, D to C sharp, and then right there, that F to E, C to B, and then D sharp to D, A sharp to A. So that's really weird. And I basically arranged it right there because it's all in the same neighborhood. That way you can kind of keep it like pretty much in the same position. You know, something like that. One more time right there. And also notice I'm using all of my fret hand fingers like as a physical challenge for that riff. And do it again. And the last time right here, do the chords. And then you hear him do this like minor pentatonic kind of fourth thing. Like that. So think of A minor pentatonic right there, and we're doing. So that's weird. And it's going to feel like you're rolling fourths, but it's sequenced in kind of an unusual way. And you're definitely kind of rolling your fingers through that riff right there. And in the same song, Buck actually has a chromatic fill that he does, like and that's just pure chromaticism right there. You know, starting on that G note, you're walking down to that E, and then that E flat down to that C. It's almost like carnival music or something. So definitely Buck's not afraid of chromatic moves and these kind of just random symmetrical kind of patterns, atonal patterns and stuff. That's really cool. Next up's a lick from the song Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll from the first BOC album. This takes place around 3:45 in the song, and we're doing... something like that. So it's basically F sharp Dorian's kind of what we're playing with. But he's doing it like this, and he's basically starting here on the D string on that A note. So you're just kind of climbing up, you know, technically F sharp Dorian, but you're starting on A. And then right there, start on this A note, and you're pulling off, you know, that A, G sharp to that, that F sharp. Do that 4 times. And then right there, climb up. Right there, you know, that F sharp, G sharp to that A, and then that B, C sharp to that D sharp. And it goes right back into the Cities on Flame with Rock and Roll riff right here. This is like F sharp blues. And that's kind of a continuation of some of Buck's like random phrasing, like I said, sometimes with riffs, sometimes with licks and solos. But right there, you know, if I kind of break those two up, we were doing this, kind of climbing up, and then those pull-offs, and then, so that's the first half, and then the riff right here, like I said, F sharp blues, that F sharp, A, F sharp, and then right here, do a quick, or quicker, you know, F sharp to A, and then we're grabbing the flat 5 right there, and then we're going to kind of roll from that C to that C sharp to that F sharp right there. And then you're going to do that C to C sharp to E twice, kind of rolling it. And then you're going back to that C to B to A to that F sharp. And that song totally kicks ass. Next up's a multi-octave lick from the song Astronomy. This is from the album Secret Treaties, and we're doing this. You know, something like that. So right here, you know, we're starting that B to A, that B to A, G to A, and then that G to E. And that's kind of the motif we're using right there. And then we're going to do the exact same thing an octave lower on another set of strings. So now start on this B note on the G string and do the same motif, but it's an octave lower, right? So we hit this, and we moved it to this, and then once again, we can do it again with those open strings down there. Like that. So, next up's the opening solo from Then Came the Last Days of May from the first BOC album, and it's this really expressive, melodic, bluesy intro solo like this. It's really cool. So one more time right there. Something like that. So we're in A minor for this, and we're going to grab this D, bend that up to E twice right there. So you're going to bend it to E the first time, and then you're going to do a bend and release the second time, and then you're basically pulling off you know, that D note to that C, and then A, C, A. So it's kind of a quick, you barely even notice that little pull off right there. And then right there, after you get to that A note, he does a little part of an an F major arpeggio right there. And Buck is constantly like putting little parts of arpeggios in his leads and solos and stuff. Like that. Then grab this G, you're going to bend that up to A and back, and then go back to that E note after the bend. And then do the same thing on the B string right there. Bend that D up to E and back, and then grab that C note right there. So you're doing that. And you're going to bend that D to E again. Go back to that C, A, C, A, and then that's where you're going to start grabbing this kind of quick hammer on pull off over here. So let's look at the first half, I guess. And you're doing this little. So that's starting that B, a quick hammer on pull off. And then you're also kind of playing with that G and that A note over there. And then when you get back to that A, that's where you're going to grab A, E flat, D to C at the end. Like that. And then that G major to A minor chords. So one more time, all the way through it kind of slow. Faster. It's a great solo, it's a great song too. Okay, next up are two fills from the very famous Don't Fear the Reaper from the album Agents of Fortune, and this first fill's like this. One more time. And I was talking earlier about Buck landing on strong accented notes or downbeats and stuff, and that's a great example of that right there, where he's doing this melodic, phrasing, but he's also rhythmically targeting things as far as what the rhythm section's doing, like that. And that last note is a very strong downbeat right there. So we're doing basically. So it's like a little part of, A natural minor, A Aeolian right there, that G, F, E, F. And then go back to that E. That's where you're going to basically do a bend and release on that D up to E and back. And then start on that D note. And you're coming down that D, C to B, grab that G note. And you're coming down that G, C, D, that D, C to B to G, and then that E rolled over to A. And Buck constantly would do like little licks and little parts like that. But it's landing, perfectly on the downbeat right there. Like that. Now the other fill takes place right after that one. It's about 10 seconds later, but we got kind of a variation of that first one. So we're sliding into that A. So that A, B, C, B back to that A. Bend and release that D note. And then that C to B. That C to B, G to E, and end on that A. The first fill. And then the second fill. And you can definitely learn a lot about phrasing from studying some of Buck's, licks and phrases like that. And then classic licks right there. Now speaking of cool phrasing, this is a fill from Godzilla from the album Spectres. I had to end this lesson with something from Godzilla. And this is one of those earlier fills in the song like this. One more time. So that. And you hear that. definitely totally fits that slinky kind of groove from Godzilla. And we're grabbing this E, bending that up to F sharp. So it's really interesting that really Buck's just playing one note, that E, but he's also bending it, changing it to an F sharp. But he starts with two, unbent E's, then he bends the E to F sharp, picks it again while it's up, and then back down, unbent. Like that. So you're doing that. And then he's going to basically grab this B note, bend that up to C sharp, and then catch that F sharp up on the high E. And then you're going to do a bend and release on that, that B up to C sharp back to B. So you're doing that, bend up, catching that high F sharp, release that bend, and then you're doing that kind of roll over to that F sharp. Like that. So that whole fill. And when he grabs that F sharp right there, he basically goes down an octave and then grabs E to F sharp an octave lower down there. And he goes back in the verse right there. Classic fill, classic song, and I love Godzilla. It's a great one. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Soloing Secrets. Let's look at Buck Dharma. Definitely a legendary guitarist with lots of respect. There's tons of very dedicated and faithful, Blue Öyster Cult fans out there. I've talked to a lot of them. I've actually taught a number of them too. And there's just something about Buck's playing, and it's kind of random and spastic at times, and then sometimes it's like authentic, like licks and phrasing and stuff that you kind of heard before. But I love when he would go off on this weird tangent and grab, very random things, and then it would fit and sit in the song, and it didn't seem out of place, where it's like, man, he just went nuts, but it worked, and a lot of times when musicians go nuts, honestly, sometimes it doesn't work, it doesn't sound good. And it's like, okay, yeah, that might be impressive on paper, or maybe you're doing some like really difficult thing, but it doesn't sound good, I don't want to listen to that. But when I hear Buck do some of this stuff, I want to hear him do it. It's like, yeah, what was that? That's really cool. Just different approaches, different note choices, and taking chances. I mean, that's really what I'm talking about. And definitely a legendary guitarist, and it was an honor to meet him, even though that was like 30 years ago. I can't believe it. But definitely that was a great day, and BOC is a great band, and Buck's a great guitarist, for sure. So thanks for the requests out there. In the meantime, leave some feedback and comments, subscribe to Lay On Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.